What we do here is we don't normally go into all the awards, and stuff, and how many platinum albums you have, but more on the kind of a shop talk thing. So I will ask you about your real name and going from Bobby Cartilage to Bobby Bones, and is that a? We're rolling. Good evening, I'm Clint Black, and tonight we are talking in circles with Bobby Bones.
Thank you.
I know you probably don't want to get into dirt on some of your guests, but I have to ask you, of all the artists who come on your show, who was the most sleepy?
Most all show up sleepy and then fake it well, because it is early, and as an artist yourself, your hours are not conducive to waking up in the morning and performing, for a radio show. And performing maybe not music, but also you have to come on and be compelling. Or I'll end the interview early because I have ratings to depend on, or we may just not air it if it's a recorded interview. And so I think that the key is people come, they're exhausted from the night before, or they're not used to waking up early, but they get there and they fake it for a good 10 to 15 minutes. At times, if they're a friend of mine, like a Jaco, and who I'm quite close with, if he shows up and he's sleepy, I will call attention to it and say, hey, what happened last night? I think now part of your artistry is acting like you're not exhausted. And I think I relate to that now because I travel and I'm doing shows myself, either, doing stand-up or doing television, and I'm often exhausted too, so we're kind of faking it at the same time, so we look out for each other. I was in Costa Rica taping a TV show for a month and a half in the jungle, and I'm out for, 6 weeks, 12 hours a day, and then I'm back in a hotel room trying to do the radio show in the morning. It gets to be exhausting, but, for me, I get to be exhausted doing something I love. And that's the constant reminder for me, because when I do get so tired and I do start to wonder, like, why am I doing this? I have to appreciate the fact that I get to be tired doing something that I've worked so hard to do. And thanks.
And you were dreaming of this, right? You were dreaming of this as a kid. And I know there's still more to go in that dream. But when you got that, is it KLAZ?
Yeah, it's my first ever radio station.
Hot Springs?
Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Yeah, so what was the job you actually got hired for?
Well, so I first started calling in when I was 13 years old and just begging to be put on the air on that same station. And I would call up and say, hey, it's Bobby the Barbarian, which is a slightly worse name than Bones.
Not as good as Cartilage.
Yeah,
I think.
And so that was my station growing up. So, I went, and I actually applied first at a country station, US 97. I was 17, and they were like, we don't hire teenagers. So I went across the street to KLAZ, which was a pop station, and I said, hey, I'd like to work here. And they said, well, we will hire you, but we're not gonna put you on the air, you're a kid. So they brought me on to play the Rick D's Weekly Countdown and clean the lobby. And so I would come in on Sundays, and I would sweep up the lobby, and I would play the countdown. And
Showbiz.
Yeah, and I would hope, I'd pray, please let this CD break, and I'm the only one up here so I can take over the airwaves. And that did not happen, but what happened was one of the other weekend guys got caught stealing equipment from the station. And last minute, they were like, hey, we need you to go on the air. And so Bobby Estel, they said, we got to give you a radio name. And they gave me two options, Bobby Z or Bobby Bones, and they were both terrible. They were.
I don't know, Bobby Bones is strong.
Now it feels strong, but
as long as your middle name's not brittle.
Yeah, I mean,
you're doing pretty good.
I felt like a pirate or something, And so I picked Bones because at least it sounded like a person, and also I was 17, and I didn't really have any say-so, but I went on the air, and I was the worst ever. I was terrible at it.
But that happened quickly, though. I mean, you weren't working there long when suddenly you're on.
I mean, a couple weeks. Yeah, a couple weeks, and,
so
I guess...
what was so bad about it?
Nothing bad, but it was... I was a kid. I'd always dreamed of being on the radio, and the first time that I opened a mic, I was so nervous, and I was so bad. And so I started to think, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life, and I suck at it. And that was me talking to myself as a kid. Like, what do I do now? Because this has been my goal. I have my opportunity, and I am not good. I think I said the wrong name a couple of times. Once the general manager called me on that, we had a hotline that would it would flash whenever the big boss called. And he called and was like, when did we hire you? That was a real question. So not only was I bad at the buttons and playing songs, but I was not good at talking. And through my career, I've never been a wonderful announcer. Even today, I don't have that great of a voice. But I figured out how to make it my voice, and I think, that's probably why I'm here now.
It's the words.
Maybe, but I don't know a lot of them.
Well, neither do our listeners. I don't know. What happened that you graduated to the really big show in Austin?
So from Hot Springs, as soon as I graduated college, I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas. It was a slightly bigger market. I thought when you move to Little Rock, that's where the weatherman was. Like Channel 7, Ned Permy. I'd watch on TV. I was like, this is the big city. Because I'm from a town of 700. And so I really thought, this is it. I made it. Obviously, I had big dreams, but all that stuff was so foreign because where I come from, nobody ever leaves the town, much less leaves the state to pursue something that is bigger than them. I got a call from Austin, Texas, and they said, hey, we'd like for you to come and maybe do our night show. And I'm in Little Rock, and I'm doing nights there, and I say, sure.
So how does that happen? They're listening, they have scouts?
No,
this is baseball scouts running around, tuning into stations all over the place?
I tried to skate on past this, but being the interviewer that you are. So this is what happened in Little Rock. There was a station that was our rival station. We're both playing the same music. And we had our station van out one night, and one of their guys put stickers all over our van. And I was very angry. I'm very competitive, but you can't destroy property. It was a competition between the two, so not just on the airwaves, but outside. And the guy that worked on my show drove back, and the van was full of Alice 107.7 stickers. Now, our station was Q100. And so I was so mad. So I told that guy, his name was Gilligan, I said, hey, get a cowboy hat. We're going over to the other station. And he was like, a cowboy hat? Why? And I said, just trust me. So it turns out that that station, that building, had just turned on a country radio station. And I said, if you go knock on the door in that cowboy hat, they will let you in if you say you work in country radio. Because they won't know the difference. You're a cowboy. What do they know? And so it's like, okay, before we went over, they had pictures on the internet of what their studio looked like. So I showed him how to run their board, how to work their radio station. I knew when their night guy left the studio. So he left at 11. We were over there at 10:20 p.m. My buddy Gilligan in the cowboy hat knocks on the door. I watch it. They go, yeah, they let him in. And I told them, I said, hey, if you get in, what I need you to do is go into the bathroom and stand on the toilet. And he's like, why? I said, because they're going to look for feet when they close this building down. It's to make sure there's nobody in the building there shouldn't be. And he's like, okay. So he goes and he stands on the toilet. And he calls me. He goes, I'm standing on the toilet. I said, okay, well, wait for my cue. I then park in the back corner of the parking lot, and I see their night guy leave the studio. He drives away. I said, okay, you're clear to stand off the toilet now. He walks into the studio. He calls me from the studio phone lines, which I showed him how to call me on my phone. So he takes me, I'm on the studio phone line, and he turns me up on their airwaves.
So they would have had something programmed.
Yeah,
he pulls
they
that
had
down.
music programmed.
Yeah.
I remember it was a Celine Dion song. And so he knew as soon as he turned me up, I was not going to make a noise until he got out of the room and got back in the car. No soldiers left behind, right? So I told him, when you come out, lock the door behind you so no one can get in, and come and get in the car. We drive off. About a mile away, I go, hello, Alice 107.7, I've taken over the airwaves. And then there's about a 7-second delay, and I'm waiting to see if it actually works. And then I hear through the radio, hello, Alice 107, and I'm like, oh my God, it's all working. I cannot believe. And so I say, this will be the last time you ever mess with Bobby Bones and Q100. I own you. And then I just start singing. I'm like, and this is your music. I just start singing. And I'm like, change the channel. This isn't going to stop. Finally, like 10 minutes later, someone gets a key, unlocks the door, goes in. You hear me go, ah, and they shut me off. So we're like high-fiving each other. It's like the greatest day. We're like, we showed them. I go home, I go to bed. I get a call at about 5:45 that morning, and it's my general manager at the station going, hey, we need to see you. And I'm like, probably get an award. This is amazing. I didn't even think about what we did the night before. So I go in, he says, I need to see you 8 o'clock sharp. Go into the office, and all the salespeople are starting to gather to start their day in the cubicles right next to the general manager's office. And he says, come on to my office. And he's angry. I'm like, what? What happened here? And he goes, did you break into a radio station last night? And I'm like, oh, I did. I reach over to shut the door because he's starting to yell at me. And I'm like, I don't want all the salespeople to hear that I'm getting screamed at. So he goes, do not shut the door. Everybody needs to hear this. And the next, I mean, it felt like 10 minutes, but we'll say 2. The next 2 minutes, he really let me have it. He gave me the business. He's like, you can't do that. You will go to jail. We'll lose our license. You, on and on. I should fire you. And I thought then, my career is over. And then he yells, shut the door. And I shut the door, and I'm scared to death because what's he going to do to me now? So
He's going to say, bravo.
I sit down, and he goes, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
And so that story got out. It was printed in like the trade magazines. That's when Austin, Texas said, you seem like you have a screw loose, but it seems to be the right screw.
Yeah. So from Austin, you get the offer to come here.
There hadn't been a national country show for people that I felt like I represented. It wasn't cowboys, honestly. I grew up in rural America. Country music talked about where I came from, but it didn't always talk about how I was feeling. So I was influenced by Napster, though. You know, I was the first generation where Napster was giving me alternative music and hip-hop, but I was still rooted in country. And I said, hey, I would like to go to Nashville and do that show because I know who I stand for. And they thought I was crazy, but they said, why don't we try it? Because my contract was up. So I moved here, and what was really weird was every single person hated me. You know, I moved to town and knowing that I didn't look like what Music Row expects me to look like. And no belt buckle, no cowboy hat. It was such a shock to the industry that CBS flew a crew down and interviewed me because of that. They're like, you're not a cowboy. What's happening here? I said, well, I don't think just cowboys listen to country music. I mean, I'm a trailer park kid from Arkansas, and I felt like, you know, I'm talking to my people who come up through the struggle of everyday life. I'm a kid who grew up without a dad, whose mom, you know, had him when she was 15 years old, who was an addict. And like, there was just a lot of just real life that was laid on to me. And I felt like that's who I was not only talking to, but talking for. And when I came and didn't look like traditionally what country music had looked like, it was pretty tough. It was tough for a long time.
So did you start having guests on right away, or did you take your time with that? You just start off slowly?
I would have guests on, but again, I would get into trouble because traditionally, record labels looked at radio as you do what we say when we say it. And I was like, no, I don't want them on the show. I would just be like, I'm not into their music, I don't want them to come on, or they're not a very good guest. So there would be executives at record labels pushing my bosses, going, hey, we don't like this guy. We need to move on because he won't put everybody that we want to be on a show. And so because I didn't fit square peg and square hole, it wasn't welcoming for me here. That all changed, and I love it here, and this is home. But for the first few years, it was very rough. There was a point where I was at the end of my rope, and I was like, I don't know what to do. It was so rough online. It was so rough on the phones. It was difficult in the city, going to an event. I was like, man, I got to make people feel differently about me. And so I took $13,000, and I bought the 4 biggest billboards in Nashville. And I didn't tell anybody I was doing it. I created a little shell company. They couldn't track back to me. And I bought 4 billboards in all white, and I bought 4 signs that said, go away, Bobby Bones. They were massive, and they were beautiful. I'm gonna say it, they were beautiful. I didn't tell anybody about the billboards. And so the news is asking, the local news, like, who do you think put these up? They're throwing out artists who hate me. I was like, I didn't know they hated me. They're like, did this person put it out? I'm like, why would they put it out? They hate me? Record labels, other radio stations, they're guessing. And I'm just like, I don't know, I'm sad. And so national news picks it up. My company, they're trying to investigate as to who put it up. And so nobody knew. But people started to, one, feel sorry for me because people had paid for a billboard saying, "Go away, Bobby Bones." They started to feel sorry for me. They started to agree with them. Or they started to go, "Who the heck is Bobby Bones?" And so you started to see a
and
new...
why do I hate
Yes,
him?
and yes. Yes.
And other people who didn't hate you had to come to your defense and say, you know, this isn't right, and we're not like that, and became more welcoming.
It was a whole fight in all directions, and I just stood back, and I was sad. So I never said anything about it. But it was the greatest piece of press for me. It was that turned this whole thing around. Because I wasn't just somebody that people didn't like. I was somebody that people felt like they had to form an opinion on because there was such a bold opinion about them already. And so from that was the shift that I started to go, all right, not only do I feel like I can do this because I do, but now I've got people coming on going, hey, we're with you. We know what you stand for. Let's do this together. And that was the first step in this.
Your books are really, you know, I'd say, I don't know if they are, but in the self-help section.
Yes.
Right?
The first one is a memoir. It's called Barebones, I'm Not Lonely If You're Reading This Book. I never really wanted to write a memoir because I was 34, 35, and I didn't have what I thought was a story people would care about. That was not my idea. We had done a kids album, The Raging Idiots, and Cracker Barrel bought the album. And it was being distributed everywhere. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. I'm gonna do a kid's book. And I went and I pitched it to like 8 different book companies. And no, got all these no's. On my last day, I went to a publishing company, HarperCollins, and they said no as well. But I was leaving and they were like, hey, we'd love to talk to you about your story, like your life story. It seems like you come from very humble beginnings, someone who has climbed from it. I don't know that I'll ever be out of it, but climbed from it, but you also are someone who likes to help others in similar situations. I said, yeah, that's true. They said, would you come back tomorrow and pitch to our nonfiction part? So I went back and they said, we'd like for you to write a memoir. And they pay you money up front and it's called an advance. And they go, here's your advance, write the book. And I said, I don't want the advance because I don't know that I'm gonna wanna put this out. I will write I'll write 30,000 words because they said they want 60,000 words. And if we all like it, I'll write the rest of it. And I had no idea how to write a book. And so I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote essay after essay and turned it in and they said, we'd like for you to finish it. And I said, I'll take the check, please. So I finished the book and I was humiliated by it at first, honestly, where it made me sad because I thought I'm sharing stories in this book, not just about my life, but I wanted to talk about situations that have affected me. You know, there was some stuff with my mom before she passed away. You know, she died when she was 46 years old. There was a lot of things that I thought no one would understand and people would feel sorry for me. And I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I've kind of fought my whole life to not be the kid that the church had to donate Christmas presents to, because I was that. And the book came out, and it was a bestseller for like 4 weeks, and that wasn't the greatest part of it. The greatest part was I would tour, and I would do meet and greets before the show, and where I thought people would come and judge me, they would come to me and go, when you wrote this, like, I'm experiencing that, or I did experience that. And it was what I felt was the closest I have ever been to anybody that listens or consumes anything I put out. So what I was so worried about was actually what was the best part about it, was me just kind of taking the rib cage, and I always open it up. But I just kind of said, here, this is what it is, and I know I'm alone, but it took that book for me to realize I'm not alone at all. I'm just part of the people that don't have a voice. And so that's why I feel like I have to stick up for them and stand for them.
Well, I'm going to change up this last question for you, since you're a unique individual on this show. When you get to heaven, if you could interview anyone who was already there, who would it be, and what would you ask them?
I just think about my grandma, right? I mean, she adopted me for a while as a kid. Now I have my wife now, but I don't have family. I just have a lot of questions about what happened to get me here, because I don't know. The first time I played the Opry and I did comedy, and comedians don't cover other comedians' jokes, but my grandmother and I watched the Opry, and we would listen to Jerry Clower, and we would laugh so much. And so the first time I played the Opry, I covered a Jerry Clower joke. And I said that to them. I said, hey, my grandmother would go crazy right now if she knew I was on the stage. And we listened to Jerry Clower, and I'm gonna do a Jerry Clower joke, and I did it. And they laughed, and wow, that felt good. Yeah. And so it'd probably be her, or Abe Lincoln. All right, there you go.
There it is. Or Abe. Oh, quick. Let's hope that's a long, long time for now. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Talking in circles with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, buddy.